They have the Superman theme, the John Williams Superman theme. You can't improve upon that. You can't replace it because it's perfect. And they brought it back. They did at least one thing right, and I'm happy because of that. So that means Superman's alive, right? Actually, I can't speak to that. Warner Brothers has been very careful with their marketing. There's been marketing across many countries, some of them showing Superman in the black suit, some of them showing Superman not in the movie at all, some of them showing Superman in dream sequences. All of these have been doctored in some way. They're all misinformation that has been deliberately spread by Warner Brothers to make sure that people really don't know what they're going to do with Superman. Is it going to be dark? Is it going to be light? Is he going to stay dead? Well, you're just going to have to watch the movie in order to find out. Regardless, this is Superman's film. This is his universe. DC has made it perfectly clear that this entire universe revolves around Superman's existence or lack thereof. Justice League is about Batman and Wonder Woman reacting to the absence of Superman. The world in Superman's death has gone crazy, berserk, and everyone is afraid. Because everyone is afraid, this summons Steppenwolf, whose goal is to collect these things called Mother Boxes. Batman and Wonder Woman go about recruiting 3 members of their new Justice League. The first one is Aquaman, also known as Arthur Curry. He has the most complicated backstory out of all these characters with a Shakespearean family drama, so naturally he's the character who will get his upcoming solo film. The second one is Cyborg. He got into an accident, ended up getting his body saved with alien technology, but that alien technology is slowly taking over his body and he is afraid that it will take over his mind. The Flash, aka Barry Allen, got struck by lightning. That's all you need to know about him. And is awkward and nerdy, and he is very innocent. He's very much the heart of the group. I think he brings the innocence to the group. And he's sort of like the surrogate Jimmy Olsen, considering that Jimmy Olsen got shot in the last movie. And he's deathly afraid of going into combat because the most he's ever done is push people. Every single scene with this kid is amazing. I love it. There you go, that's all you need to know about the group. They get together right now over me. That is the plot of the movie. Overall, it's a pretty simple film, has a very direct 3-act structure. Well, minus any Superman-related stuff that they may or may not do. So, what are some of the highlights? Well, I loved Steppenwolf. I really enjoyed him. That is probably going to sound weird to people who have seen the movie, because he's real simple. He just wants to conquer the world, but something about the gleam in his eye as he says he's going to conquer the world. And you'll all love me. I love it. This guy is played by a Shakespearean actor, and you can kind of tell because he has such a command over this character's face. Every time you see Steppenwolf's face, I love it. I love looking at his expressions. I love the way he intonates his voice. And just as a presence, I think he's great. He's not too complicated, but fortunately, he's the type of villain who can come back later on. And I think that they will develop him more in future movies, and maybe he could be an ongoing nemesis of the Justice League. I also liked the colors and the costumes. The costumes are pretty accurate to the DC comics for what they're doing. And the colors are also pretty good. Aquaman's is muted, but Barry Allen, I swear, he's exactly what I imagined the Flash looking like in real life. I mentioned the music. The music is pretty good. I liked it. They had a pretty good opening credits music. There was elements of the Batman theme. They had the Wonder Woman theme, but not as that electric cello version that sounds out of place. They had a trumpet version, which sounds great, it's much better. It was good in the first place, but this, I think, is what has really brought it to its full maturity. The best piece of music in the whole movie, though, is definitely the flashes. Whenever he goes into slow motion, there's this amazing piece of music, which I think is one of the highlights of the film. And of course, you already know my opinion on the use of the Superman theme. They did do a little bit new to it. It wasn't featured prominently, but it was there. For grammar nerds, you might understand what I mean when I say that they sort of took the Superman theme and shifted it into the conditional mood. The cinematography is pretty good, especially in some of these opening scenes that were clearly shot by Zack Snyder. The very first shot that you have of Themyscira is gorgeous. It reminds me of this thing called Motunui Online game back in the day. Also, the first shot of Gotham, very atmospheric. Zack Snyder is a very good visual storyteller, and he brings something very unique to the table. There are many points that I could also tell that this was shot on film, which makes me really love the look even more. Now, I don't say this too often about a movie, but the 3D looked better than the 2D. I watched it in both, which I also don't do too often. And I watched it first in the 3D, then I watched it in the 2D, and I noticed a difference, and the 3D does actually look quite a bit better. What are some things that I didn't like? Well, I still hate Amy Adams as Lois Lane. The other thing that I didn't like, and this is a bit more objective, is the editing. Each scene doesn't quite fully lead into the other scene in a way that preserves the momentum. That is an issue for me. I also think that there are certain 3 scenes surrounding Superman that really should have been the first 3 scenes in the movie, but they were scattered throughout the first act, and I really think that they should have really loaded that in the front. The introduction of each of the characters and the back and forth between those scenes, you could have had a direct transition from one scene to the next. As it happens, some poor editing and storytelling editing does take away a little bit from the momentum that the movie is trying to build up. So it doesn't feel like the action is really rising at some points where I really think that it should be rising. There are also scenes where I think that it just should have gone on longer. This is a very short movie. It's only about an hour and a half long. In particular, in the second act, I feel that certain scenes should have been stretched out. Character scenes, also action scenes, really just a lot of scenes in the second act, which I think is where a lot of the momentum of the story was. I think that you're going to get the most out of this film if you realize that it's not quite the Avengers. It is not trying to be a major event film or an epoch-defining moment in the DC movie history. It's not the Avengers. What I'd compare it more to is a pilot episode from one of their animated television shows. Really, when I think about it, that actually makes a lot more sense when I think about it in that way. Because you get introduced to the characters, you kind of get the team up, you set the tone for the rest, but you're not really having a major event. It's just a pilot episode. You have your villain who's going to return, and you establish the friendship and the chemistry between the characters, not necessarily any universe-defining moments. Speaking of chemistry, I do get sort of a Super Friends vibe at certain points. Now, if they had made the second act longer, it would have felt more like a summer blockbuster, like a really big cinematic event, but I am going to stick with my analysis that it is an animated television pilot, except adapted to the big screen in live action. I can also say that having watched this twice, the editing didn't quite bother me so much the second time around, and I do think that this has a bit of rewatchability. Part of that is because it's short. I do think this is taking the DC movies in a better direction. It's improving their atmosphere. It is improving your sense of what DC is all about. So what's my final rating? I'm going to say 3 out of 5 stars. Very solid 3 out of 5 stars. You'll love me. You all will.